As Maureen said, my name is Julie King and I'm from QUT. Before I in Cambodia, it's a tool of empowerment, so you have a microphone. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the other researchers on this particular piece of research. Dr. Nikki Edwards, who's up the back there, Dr. Ignacio Correal-Benez, and Maureen Fordyce, who's standing over there and just introduced me. I'd also like to make it clear that although this research focuses on a lot of deficits in the area of refugee communities, I'd really like to make it perfectly clear that there are a lot of strengths and resilience amongst these communities. And the purpose of this research was to try and find the gaps, and so there's not much focus on the strengths within these communities. Okay, so people from refugee backgrounds who live in Australia are not a homogenous group, and we've heard this consistently throughout the day so far. People from COG backgrounds are not a homogenous group. And even within those cultures, they're not homogenous. We need to be quite clear about that. They're disadvantaged on a number of levels, and unfortunately, because of the direction Australia is taking presently, that disadvantage, if you're a person from a refugee background, seems to be growing. They find difficulties in employment, they're exposed to stigma, discrimination and marginalisation. And this is compounded for people from refugee backgrounds when they live with a disability. And that goes further for also the families who are carers of people with disability. So there are a lot of complicating factors around the resettlement program. There's limited international and Australian research into the impact of disability on the resettlement processes for people from these backgrounds. And most of the research that has been done has focused on mental health and not on other forms of disability. So in the past 10 years, we've seen close to 140,000 people arrive in Australia from refugee and humanitarian programs. And between 2010 and 2014, we've seen just over 10,000 settled in Queensland. Okay, the proportion of humanitarian entrants entering Australia who have a disability is currently unknown. We have no idea the extent of the problem, the types of disability, and the impact it's having on the people with disability and their families. It's potentially high because of the consequences of human rights violations such as torture, environments of extreme poverty and being in a refugee camp for sometimes more than 20 years. Other hardships may contribute to an increased probability of disability. Disability can include residual injuries from experiences of torture, and this is a wide range of things, from epilepsy to visual impairments, brain injury, difficulty with mobility and walking, chronic pain and sexually transmitted infections. In addition, it may contribute to mental illness that can be expressed with somatic symptoms, which present as disability. So it could be quite extensive, but we just don't know. Refugee research and disability are two areas that haven't really crossed over to much extent. Of the few studies that have been conducted, the research suggests that people from refugee backgrounds with disability are likely to encounter dual disability or dual barriers, both because of the disability they're living with and because of the resettlement or because they're from a refugee background. At present, there are no current studies that focus on intellectual disability that we could actually find, except for one that we've recently published. Stigma follows them. So stigma is directed at their race, nation and religion, but stigma is also directed at them because of their disability and because of their refugee status. Stigma is experienced in a home country as well as coming here to Australia. So what we did with this, we wanted to look at the social and cultural construction of disability, because disability is a very Western construct. And this is a wonderful quote that says, therefore, we should be reluctant to make false assumptions about people's behaviours, experiences, barriers and solutions based on previous work on disabled people from generally white, privileged and Western Judeo-Christian societies. Okay, so what we did for our research, we did an extensive literature review. The majority of disability literature focused on mental health, as you would expect, with little attention explicitly directed or paid to disability, including physical, sensory and intellectual disability. And we collected our data in 2014 and worked in close collaboration with Amparo Advocacy. The ethical and clearance, of course. And this area of study, it's actually really hard to get any money or any funding to actually do it. So we had limited funds, and so we only interviewed 10 people. So it's not representative, okay? But it does give some clear indications of some of the barriers within the communities in the aspects of disability. So the participants were recruited from Amparo, and interviews lasted up to over 2 hours. So people were quite ready to talk about their experiences. And some sort of said, well, we don't often get asked this, so it was important that we actually did this. Interpreters were utilised in 4 interviews, and the primary researcher, which was myself, I have extensive cross-cultural experience, and so we wanted to use somebody who was able to put people at ease, but also to be aware of some of the complications or some of the difficulties of working cross-culturally. We transcribed the data verbatim and thematically analysed it, and it was cross-checked within the research team. And we've extensively used in the articles that we've published and the work that we've done with Amparo, we've used extensive quotes from this because we want the voice of the people that we spoke to be the ones that are heard. So what we did, the aims of the research were to explore the personal journeys of the participants from the country of origin to Australia, their constructions of disability, because that can be quite different, and also the fact that their experiences in their own country impact on their view of disability and how they experience disability. The impact of disability on the participant's family was also important to have a look at, because the experience is often felt by the families as well. We looked at the support that was received from a mainstream community in Australia, knowledge of government entitlements and services, and participants' experiences in this domain and areas where additional resources were needed. So I know this is quite vague, but we wanted to keep some privacy around participants. So we interviewed people from Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Middle East and South Asia. And some were people with disability, and those who couldn't give informed consent, we interviewed their family carers. So in addition to intellectual disability that we identified, other forms of disability were muscular dystrophy, hearing impairment, epilepsy, autism spectrum disorder, acquired brain injury, chronic pain, mobility impairments, visual impairments, and partial paralysis. Okay, so the findings, lived experience of people with disability in their countries of origin. People don't check their culture at the border when they come to Australia. They bring that with them, their communities bring that with them. That may change to some degree over time, but that culture is deeply embedded in who they are, and their experiences before they come to Australia is who they are. It's what makes them, what gives them their experiences. So, we're talking about these experiences that develop and lead to how they experience their impairments in the form of disability in Australia. Okay, language used to describe the experiences was consistently negative in the participants that we talked to. And again, this is not a representative sample, it's only 10 people. So participants from Southeast Asia and from South Asia recounted disability as a result of karma, so misdeeds may be done in a past life, and so it visits them in the form of an impairment causing disability. And this is a quote from one of our male participants. Some people also scolded in the village, you know, you are cursed, you are an idiot, just like that, because of your sin. You know, that stays with them. You know, you can imagine the impact that has on how they feel about themselves. And so it's important that, you know, when we work with them, that we understand how they construct disability and how that impacts on their experience and how we need to work with them. The same person explained that because of this perception, that people with disability would often feel guilt and shame. So that was the impact of this particular belief. Two participants from sub-Saharan Africa stated that their communities view disability as a result of witchcraft or multi-generational curse, and this could result in a child with disability being hidden away due to disability. So if they come to Australia, they hide their child away. How do we know? How do we get to those people? How do we give them care? How do we give them services? Shame was also mentioned by family members from the Middle East as a result, as a reason to hide the person, and this was seen as a norm. For some, discrimination resulted in limited opportunities to study and gain meaningful employment. So another participant said, going to university, no support, nothing. You basically live day to day, so you cannot have a goal like a citizen. It's so hard, no job, no future, basically. Now, these experiences impact on the lives in Australia, and in some cases, the beliefs of the community follow them to Australia. So, you know, I know we've been talking about this community-to-community response to disability, but if people are not included or excluded within their own communities, it can make it difficult, and this is something that we need to consider. Another thing was looking at how government and non-government services functioned on arrival, and I think really for this there's really no surprises. Centrelink and other government agencies tended to frame these services as impersonal and bureaucratic. Issues identified including not being referred to specialist agencies, family members being told they were carers, and if they wanted to work part-time, they were required to act as a carer, and it was sort of an earn or learn mentality. A lack of communication between government services and participants was pronounced within all the responses. One man waited 3 weeks to get back from a government organisation regarding appropriate residential placement for his brother with a disability. During that time, his brother was moved to another residential facility without the family formally being told. So there's that loss of voice and feeling powerless. For some participants, the service received were better than the country of origin. And I think this is a really important point, that you know, people who come from poverty, people who come from areas where there's conflict and there aren't the services, any service that they receive is better than what they got. And so there could be this tendency to accept it without knowing what their rights are, without knowing about how we frame what we do within the UNCRPD. And so this fellow says, or this woman says, we would accept things because my mum would say, we don't want to have a trouble with them. And we look at where he is now, where they used to tie him up at a window so they don't give him food, They would torture him, they used to hit him on the head, and his teeth were like broken. And he was tortured for years. They were giving him drugs and all kinds of things. And we look at him now, he's in a room, so he's okay. So they give him an extra tablet and this and that. So we accept things because we think compared to where he was, wow. So all participants spoke positively about an NGO advocacy agency, I don't know if what that agency is, working with them to negotiate complex service systems. I think this is a really important point. A lot of the people that we speak to within refugee communities, if you advocate for yourself, if you advocate for your community, you're at risk of persecution, you're at risk of being put in prison, you're at risk of torture. And so to advocate is not something people feel comfortable with all the time. And we're expecting people to advocate. We're expecting people to set goals when that is not a cultural norm for some countries to think, further ahead down the line about what is available for them. And if they don't know what their rights are, how can they set goals to make their lives better? One participant had very poor experience with an NGO provider who did not consult the family and questioned the care given to their family member with a disability. And this particular family felt very voiceless, very powerless in the negotiation with this particular NGO. The majority of the NGO's access, though, was seen in a positive light, but acknowledged that this is a space where more are needed. With the family, we often talk about disabilities and individual experience, and for the person with disability, yes, it's an individual experience, but there is a family often around that person. And for refugee communities, family is really important as they've been displaced, and that connection is of great comfort. So the majority of family members interviewed reported feeling stress in caring for a family member with disability, found the service environment complex and difficult. One sister of a person with disability identified having a family member with a disability made everyone else in the family sick because of the attention focused on that person. A lack of formal disability support services and subsequent need to provide high levels of care to a family member was seen to have impact on the entire family. And I think that this is a really strong quote on the experience of this particular family. Sometimes I really look at the people who have a normal life. I'm very jealous of them. I see their normal life is very sweet than this. There may be something, and maybe something is quieter than this. No more attention, everyone on the right track. They go to school, they come back. They go to work, they come back. No pressure, no more yelling. And this, was a few of the experiences that we heard. That, there was a settlement program didn't account for people having to care for people with disability. For others, stress associated with supporting a family member with disability within a new cultural framework is really difficult. I'm worried because, teenagers, it's really hard when they go to school. She can go and do something bad outside, and I'm really worried. I want my daughter to stay home. They tell me because she's 16, she is responsible for herself. But it is hard for me because our kids are not Australian people. They experience the sense of childhood, the sense of disability differently. In all cases where family members were interviewed, high levels of stress were observed. So when we listen to the transcripts back, so other members of the research team listen to the transcripts as well, you could hear the anger, you could hear the despair, you could feel how upset they were, and sitting with those people, it was quite emotionally charged because of the experiences that they were feeling at that particular time, the sense of voicelessness, powerlessness. They felt that it interrupted their settlement process, which is a difficult process anyway, regardless, but to have this added complication or this added role of being a carer for a person with disability was quite difficult. Trying to adapt to a new country and culture and negotiate a complex service system adding to the stress. Barriers to communication and language. One participant told me that, the service providers felt that he could speak English fairly well, and on the surface he could. But, just being able to speak a language doesn't mean that you understand the nuances, okay? Yep. So that was difficult for them. Participants noticed that there was a difference between language and communication. Community of origin, and as I spoke before, because of the beliefs of the community, sometimes the community was not as supportive as we imagined that it would be. One participant with a carer, and this sort of shows this quite nicely, I used to associate with the community, but the passing of my partner, no one came to see me, not even to say I sympathise with me, not even to sympathise with me. It hurts, and not to know that you're part of something, and the need of sympathy or comfort, and none of them came around. So I don't think that this community is right for me. So I just flick to some of the conclusions here. Major policy and program change is obviously happening, and the NDIS, although that it does have a lot of great things going, is very complex. And for people from refugee backgrounds who have limited resources, maybe limited community resources as well, and because of this lack of voice in the form of advocacy, could make it a very difficult